Alright, Meat Shields, here is a question for that ass. What do you get when you combine one of nature's sweetest critters, 50 gallons of toxic waste, and a grudge against humanity? Well, you end up with the deadliest beast on 4 hooves, and now he's coming back to settle the score. This Thanksgiving is about to be interrupted by a giant mutated deer with a taste for human flesh, and he's not gonna stop until every single one of them is dead. Yeah, baby! We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the mutant deer in Bambi the Reckoning. So when your movie is called Bambi the Reckoning, I think that's a pretty good sign to sit the f down, shut the f up, and strap in. Because these humans are about to create a monster. Many years ago, a cute little deer named Bambi lived in the forest with his mama until one terrible day when a hunter came along and, 86'd her with the blicky, leaving poor little Bambi all on his own. Over the seasons, he grew up into a big, strong buck, and that's when he met a doe named Faline. And they even had a little fawn of their own. But one day when Faline was crossing the road, she was run over by a giant truck, and the humans hit Bambi with a shovel as a baby and then disappeared into the woods. When Bambino wakes up, he's heartbroken to find out that the humans had done it again, and while he'd been asleep, they'd even dumped a bunch of toxic waste into the river. I mean, what's a fawn to do? Without even knowing it, he drank from the river and began to transform, mutating into a giant monster with a hunger for revenge. Shortly after realizing what they've just created, the people responsible sent out a team of hunters to destroy the creature and cover up their crimes, but as you guys can probably guess, that was their biggest mistake. Alright, it looks like Pooh and Piglet officially have some competition, but leave it to some shady company to create a teenage mutant ninja Bambi, and then send in a bunch of unprepared Sasquatch hunters to clean it up. I mean, just look at the squad that they've put together here. We've got 3 local yokels using weapons from the 1800s, and this guy Tyler can't even hit a dead bird from like 10 feet away. So unless they want to end up as Deer Chow, they need to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch. Now, pre-mutation Bambi was a roe deer, a species common in Europe. That's about half the size of the American whitetail. They usually hang out along the forest edges where the trees meet open land, and are most active at dawn and dusk, bedding down in thick vegetation during the day. They've also got an excellent sense of smell to detect predators, and their sight is tuned for detecting motion with better night vision than even humans. But Bambi isn't your average deer, no, because after drinking the contaminated water, he's grown to roughly 11 feet tall and should weigh somewhere around 5,000 pounds, making him about as big as a full-size SUV. And when you throw in a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth, it means they need to treat this like they're hunting a T-Rex. So first, they'd want to use trail cams equipped with drones and thermal imaging to map out Bambi's territory. But sneaking up on him while he's resting probably isn't going to work, so instead they need to lure him into some kind of trap. There's 2 things that mutant Bambi is most likely to go for, more of this green goo, and the sound of a doe in distress, since the company seems to have plenty of toxic waste lying around. They can set some out in an open field and see if he takes the bait, and if that doesn't work, then they can use speakers playing female distress calls to draw him in. This is just hunting 101 here. They'll want to set up a downwind of the bait site and use hunting spray to cover up their scent. Then they can watch from a safe distance using thermal optics once he shows up, and take a shot using a rifle with a long-range scope. That way, they're letting Bambi come to them and can take him down safely before he even knows that they're around, instead of wandering into his territory like a bunch of idiots just waiting to get murked. Jumping this freight train off, Xana and her son Benji are on their way to spend Thanksgiving with her husband, Simon, and his family. They're waiting by the car when he calls to say that he's running late for work, but he promises that he's going to be there in time for dinner. But clearly frustrated, Xana takes her son and gets into the cab. But she's got no idea that they're headed straight for a massacre. Heading out to the countryside, the very talkative driver almost gets into an accident with a passing truck, and apologizing, he mentions that there've been a lot of suspicious people hanging around the area for several weeks, which is totally what you want to tell somebody that you're carting around that you've never met before. But as usual, the public has no idea what they're up to. They have to pull over when Benji starts to get a little sick, and he says that he's nervous that his parents are getting a divorce, but reassuring him, Xana promises that his father's gonna be there soon, so not to worry. territory. When they're about to pull off, he notices a strange gurgling sound coming from somewhere in the woods, but his mother insists that they have to hit the road. And they haven't even really gone that far when the driver starts reaching for some candy, but when he looks back at the road, he's horrified to see the giant mutated deer coming straight towards them. I mean, he tries to swerve out of the way, keyword try, but the deer rams into the cab and sends them flying off the road, flipping them through the air until they finally come to a stop at the bottom of a hill. Obviously stunned, Xana's relieved that her son wasn't hurt, but it's not very long before they see the creature pacing around the van. You know, for a moment, everything goes quiet, but that's when the beast roars and stomps down on top of the car, trying to crush everybody inside. It's holy hours taking place. Now horrified, Xana pulls her son close, says it keeps pushing down harder and harder, but just when they think that it finally stopped, it rears up and pushes down so hard that the driver's bones start poking through the skin. With only seconds before they're crushed, Xana kicks out the window and pulls her son out of the car just in time. And looking back, they see the enormous monster standing on top of the car, and it lets out a terrifying roar as they start running for their lives. Alright, now this is the exact opposite of what's supposed to happen when a deer gets caught in the headlights. It looks like Xana and Benji have officially entered Bambi's hunting ground. And if they're going to survive, they'll need to understand what they're up against. Now to start, it's kind of important to understand why Bambi would have attacked in the first place. I mean, after all, deer aren't predators the last time that I checked, and they usually don't act aggressively outside of very specific conditions. Like, for example, bucks become extremely territorial during the mating season, and they're more likely to attack anything that they see as a challenge. So it's possible that Bambi saw the van as a rival intruding on his territory. And we can't forget that his mate, Faylene, was attacked and killed by a truck, so from his perspective, a passing vehicle is going to be seen as a threat. Now, when a predator attacks, it's because the animal is trying to eat you, which means you're going to have to fight back. But when a prey species attacks, they're doing it to eliminate a threat. So if they think the danger's over, they should move on and leave you alone. So with that being said, once Bambi had already flipped them over, the best strategy would have been to stay absolutely silent, hoping that he was only after the van and not the humans inside. After the first attack, he came back as if he were checking to see if the van was still alive. So that's when they should have played dead until he moved on. By making noise, they let him know that the job was not finished, which could be why he decided to attack again. But if they'd stayed perfectly silent, they might have been able to wait him out and escape later without him noticing. Or at least they hope so. Now it looks like they're gonna have to escape on foot, and Bambi may still be at large, but he's still built for speed, so there's no chance of outrunning him in a straight line. Instead, they need to go straight for any dense brush, thick trees, or rocky outcrops that they can use to break his line of sight. Then move in short, quiet bursts of about 50 yards at a time or so, using cover whenever they can and stopping often to listen for any signs that he's still around. And if they come across a stream, they can use the water to disrupt their scent and throw him off their trail. The key here is to lose him however they can, and then make their way towards any signs of civilization where they'll have other people to use as meat shields, and a phone that they can use to call for help. Anyways, Benji's grandmother Mary is outside standing in the yard all by herself, and everyone thinks that she's crazy, but somehow she knows that Bambi is coming. Meanwhile, inside the spot, Harriet here is getting frustrated that Xana and Benji are running late, but she doesn't have any signal to call them. Now, you guys know I love landlines and never miss an opportunity to bring one up in a How to Beat video, but they don't have a landline either, since they had to unplug it when the old woman wouldn't stop calling, so for now it looks like they're just gonna have to wait. Speaking of the old woman, Harriet notices Mary standing in the yard and goes out to bring her inside. You know, she's definitely annoyed with her stepson Harrison for letting his grandma out of the crib, and she warns him to keep an eye on her for the rest of the night. Please, Harrison, my guy, keep an eye on Mary. God. Just then, the woman looks up and says they're here because, you know, poltergeist and everything, and a moment later, they hear the front door open as someone rushes inside. It's Xana and Benji, and although it looks like they barely survived the trip, Harriet immediately taps her wrist to shame them for running late. Once they get settled, Xana explains that they were attacked by a giant creature, and she's worried that the cab driver might need their help. That's when Harriet says that it sounds a little risky and insists that they should all just stay inside. But Simon's brother Josh decides to go take a look for himself. You do that, Josh. Benji rolls up his pants, discovering that he was injured in the crash, and his mother quickly gets up to take care of his wounds. Back on the road, the mysterious truck pulls over near the crash site, and a group of men get out to take a look. It's the team of hunters who are out looking for the mutated deer, and rightly so. Checking the cab, they find Zena's cell phone lying inside, which, like, girl, how did you leave your cell phone? Anyway, just then they hear the creature rumbling from somewhere nearby, and they all ready their weapons as they start to search the area. Back at the cribbo, the others notice Mary drawing furiously in her sketchbook, which, okay, slay, and Harrison hits her with a pillow to make the woman stop. Ouch! Annoyed, Xana tells him to leave the old bat alone, but she just goes right back to drawing like it never happened. This is when Benji begins to worry about the cab driver, but his mother reassures him that Josh is gonna help. Yeah, Josh. Nervous, he asks when old Pop-Pop is gonna show up, and Xana promises that the man is gonna be there soon. The hunters can still hear the creature watching them, and they're all incredibly tense, knowing that it could attack at any second. One of them, upon hearing a noise, even quickly fires off a shot, but ends up hitting Josh straight in the dome, Dick Cheneying that motherfucker before he even knows what happened. Meanwhile, Xana is just trying to get her bearings and notices a creepy painting on the wall that looks just like the creature that just attacked them. Simon's brother Andrew explains that his mother's been painting them nonstop for weeks, and it leaves her wondering if it's all, connected. Okay, well, so much for that rescue mission, I guess. I mean, it's bad when these idiots start taking each other out before Bambi even gets the chance. Now, on the bright side, at least Tyler finally learned how to aim, but it's pretty obvious that Josh never should have been out there in the first place. Yeah, so let me get this straight. Xana and Benji show up saying that they were just attacked by a giant man-eating monster. Okay, cool. And this guy decides to go check it out by himself with nothing but a phone that doesn't even have a signal? Like, I don't know who's the bigger idiot, Josh for suggesting it or the others for letting him go, but at this point, they might as well have started planning his funeral because they were never gonna see this guy again. And seriously, they didn't even know if this cab driver was still alive, so he was basically risking his life just to find a dead body. And if he ended up lost or in trouble, that just makes things worse for everybody else. The most important part of any rescue mission is to never make yourself another victim, so instead of letting this idiot go for the last nature walk of his life, they should stick together and figure out a way to call for help. So now it looks like Josh is gone, and it won't be long before they're next, but even after finding out there is a gigantic demonic deer on the loose, they haven't done anything to prepare themselves in case it shows up. Like, what the people. Now's the time to get ready, not act like this is no big deal. First, they need to close the curtains, shut off all the lights, and turn off anything that makes noise because the last thing they want is to attract Bambi's attention. They won't stand much of a chance in a fight without serious firepower, but they can still arm themselves with whatever they've got, whether it's hunting rifles and shotguns, axes and chainsaws, or even just some makeshift spears. Then all that's left to do is stay quiet and keep checking their phones in case they get any signal. But eventually they're going to realize that Josh is not coming back, and that's when it's time to get the hell out of there while they still have the chance. Now, since Josh was only visiting for the holidays, they should have at least 2 cars at the house, and assuming he left his keys, they can use both to make their escape. Xana should take Benji, Mary, and Harriet in the faster vehicle, while Andrew hops in the other one. Then, if Bambi attacks, he can create a distraction while they get to safety, because it's better if at least some of them survive than all of them ending up dead. Anyways, the hunters are furious when they realize what they've just done, and looking over the body, they figure out that he must have come from the house nearby. I mean, they still have a job to do, so the leader Michael decides to cover it up, ordering the others to just hide his body in the truck. Back at the spot, Harrison gets called away by his stepmom, leaving Benji and his grandma alone in the room, which is when she notices something outside. Upon first glance, it looks like nothing's out there, but something keeps messing with the motion-activated lights. While she's distracted, Benji flips through the drawings in the woman's sketchbook and finds out that every single one of them is the same demonic creature. He gets up to see what she's looking at when suddenly they both jump back as something crashes straight into the window. It's one of the dead birds that the hunters are using as bait, and when they look up, they see this massive creature just standing on the edge of the yard. Terrified, the boy calls for his mother, who immediately comes running to see what happened. When she looks out the window, it's just not there. But they do hear the creature trampling towards them as it comes charging across the yard, and they barely manage to get away as it crashes straight through the window. Running for their lives, they rush down the hallway with the monster chasing after them, but they're able to escape when its antlers get stuck in the walls. In the kitchen, the others hear something coming down the hallway, and they all start to panic as the horrifying monstrosity emerges from the darkness. Terrified, the family takes cover behind the island, but just when it looks like the creature has gone away, Harriet feels something wet dripping down on her head. Looking up, she's horrified to see the monster standing over her, but she's able to get away just in time, avoiding its teeth as she gets up to make a run for the restroom. Shutting the door, she backs up into the corner and starts trying to get open the window, but Bambi starts twisting the handle until he's able to get inside. I mean, this motherfucker is already right on top of her by the time that she finally gets the window open, and as she's climbing out, it pierces one of its antlers straight through the back of her leg. The others all rush outside and climb into the RV, but sure enough, the damn thing won't start. Typical RV behavior. That's when Harrison notices that his stepmom is missing, and when they look outside, they see her running for her life with the creature right behind her. I mean, she tries her best to get away, but she doesn't make it very far before the monster catches up and skewers Harriet with its antlers, tearing her in half right in front of the whole family. Alright man, this is officially the worst Thanksgiving ever. Actually, I'm starting to think that Grandma might be the only one here with any common sense, because when she felt Bambi lurking outside, at least she was smart enough to turn off the light. That probably bought them some time, but then Xana came along and completely it up. Like, hello! Instead of just standing there by the open window, how about we close the curtains, shut off the lights, and start backing up, dumbass? You see, because he's so giant, I'm willing to bet that Bambi would have some trouble with the average staircase. So the best plan would be to get upstairs and find somewhere to hide while he's going after everybody else. Now as for Harriet, she was just unlucky that Bambi singled her out, and once she got to the restroom, going out the window was her only choice, but she panicked and kept looking back over her shoulder instead of focusing on getting it open. I'm not gonna give her the cliche advice to remain calm, as if that's even possible, but getting a window open should never be that hard, so either use the fear to help you figure it out, or find something to smash it with before it's too late. And because it took her so long, she ended up getting stabbed in the leg, making her escape even more unlikely. But as we can see from this moment during the chase, Bambi clearly has trouble making quick turns, and that's something Harriet should have used to her advantage. Instead of running in a straight line, she needed to quickly dive to the side as soon as the camper came into view. With any luck, Bambi might have slid right past her, and once he noticed the bigger target, he'd go after the camper instead, giving her a chance to sneak back to the house. After all, Harrison just got done saying that she's not his real mom, so if that's how he really feels, then using him as a meat shield is a perfectly viable choice. Turning the key, Andrew's finally able to start the engine of the RV, which is absolutely insane. Have you ever tried to start one of these things? They never start on time, and the beast starts charging after them as they speed down the road. Harrison notices the side door swinging open, and leaning out, he starts pelting the deer with anything that he could find. But, and I know this sounds crazy, it only makes Bambi even more angry. Realizing that it's no use, he closes the door and gets back inside, but Bambi is still right behind him. I mean, Andrew tries to gain some speed as the beast starts shoving them to the side of the road, but the gear lever becomes jammed, and Xana has to help him push it in place. Come on, Andrew! They're able to switch gears just in time, and the family speeds away as Bambi calls off the chase, but he's not gonna let them get away so easily. Sometime later, the hunters arrive at the house and find the place completely f***ed up. The others haven't made it far before they find a huge tree blocking the road, and while Xana gets out to take a gander, Mary tries confronting her grandson the best that she can. They eventually decide to move it with a rope, but since Xana has to help them push, it's up to Benji to drive the van. And they're just about to put their plan into action when they hear the monster coming back, and looking up, they're horrified to see it charging straight towards them. Panicking, Benji slams on the gas, and Andrew's foot ends up getting caught in the rope, and they start dragging him down the road. Harrison tries to rush after them, but there's no way to catch up as Benji leaves him in the dust. And horrified, Benji closes his eyes, but the monster swerves out of the way at the last second. Back on the side of the road, Harrison runs for cover when he hears the creature coming his way. He manages to hide behind one of the trees, and he starts backing up while it's distracted, but he ends up stepping right on a pile of twigs, and hearing them snap, the monster looks up and starts chasing him even deeper into the forest. But with the creature still coming after him, his only choice is to lay back down and play dead. Standing over him, the beast leans down with its jaws just inches away from his head, but that's when it hears a fawn somewhere in the distance and decides to leave him as it goes to check it out. And I mean, damn, Harrison, that is one sticky situation. Okay, Harrison might have gotten lucky this time, and guess what? All of this could have been easily avoided if they weren't so fucking dumb. Now, you might think that they never stood a chance of outrunning this thing in the RV, but that would be your biggest mistake. You see, deers are prey animals, which means that they're built for short bursts of speed, not long-distance chases. So even though Bambi here could easily keep up with the van at first, it should only be a minute or two before he needs to stop and rest. But with that being said, they'd need all the speed that they could get, and that's why this moron Harrison over here wasn't doing them any favors. When he was hanging out the open door, he created extra drag by messing with the airflow across the side of the van. Although it doesn't look like it, this could cut their usable speed by anywhere from 5 to 10 miles per hour, and that's a pretty big deal when you need to be going as fast as possible. Not to mention, he's putting himself in danger of falling out and causing even more problems. So instead of uselessly hitting Bambi with random junk from the kitchen, he should have closed the door and kept his arms and legs inside the ride. Now, one thing the hunters are doing that these people aren't is remembering to stay quiet. Bambi is going to come running towards any sounds of human activity, so instead of loudly arguing about your family drama while slowly going to clear the path, how about we keep our voices down, quickly tie the rope to one end of the log, and move it just enough to squeeze by and get the f up out of there. That way we don't end up accidentally killing Uncle Andrew in the chaos. And speaking of what happened there, Benji might have not realized it at the time, but speeding right towards Bambi was actually the smartest thing that he could have done. If he'd tried to swerve out of the way, Bambi would have sensed their weakness and flipped the camper. But since he didn't flinch, this triggered Bambi's natural survival instincts and made him decide to back down. Of course, he ended up killing his uncle and leaving his cousin behind in the process, but hey, you win some, you lose some. Am I right? So while Bambi's busy on another side quest, these three should keep driving towards safety, and if they have any cell phones, keep checking them for signal until they can call for help. Anyways, miles up the road, the van eventually comes to a stop, and Xana realizes that they've finally run out of gas. And somehow, that's when they both realize that Grandma has also gone missing. And they eventually spot the old woman meandering even deeper into the forest, and the two of them start chasing after her before she goes too far. Meanwhile, Harrison's ass is trying to figure out a way back to civilization, but he can't even seem to find a signal with his phone. Just then, he hears something, moving around in the darkness, but he's relieved to see that it's just a cute little bunny sitting on top of a log. The bunny hops over to check him out, but the idiot kicks the poor thing like a soccer ball and sends it flying into the brush. Which is when another rabbit jumps out from behind the log, but this one looks kinda different, and it snarls at him with a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly, Harrison then sees dozens of these creatures hopping towards him as they all begin to close in, but he trips and falls straight into a bear trap. And in a movie scene that was absolutely nowhere on my 2025 bingo card, the rabbits swarm in and start tearing him apart, with absolutely nothing he can do to fight back. And Meat Shields, I just want to take this in for a second here, but we just watched Harrison get eaten by a bunch of little babies on YouTube. Alright, buddy here just got jumped by the cutest gang of ferocious fuzzballs that this forest has ever seen. So before we get back to the main event, let's get one thing out of the way. Harrison, my boy, you done up. Now, maybe if you weren't acting like such a little jerk all the time, your family wouldn't have left you behind like Sid from Ice Age. I mean, your Aunt Xana was ready to go back for the cab driver, but when it came to her own nephew, she didn't even think about turning back. And that's how you know you're the least popular kid in the family. Like, am I crazy, or do they not even care that you're gone? Because that's what it sure looks like. I guess luck was on your side the first time, but instead of taking that as a sign to change your ways, you doubled down on being a total piece of and punt a sweet little bunny like a damn football. But what you didn't realize is that these bunnies, they roll deep. But come on, man, did you really manage to get away from an 11-foot monstrosity only to get taken out by these things? I mean, here's an idea, just turn and run. Rabbits are quick, sure, but the average person could easily outrun a pack of killer bunnies, especially with a head start. So if you just booked it out of there or even climbed up a tree, you might have stood a chance. And you'd think you would have learned to watch where you were going after backing up into a bunch of twigs. But I guess that's just nature taking its course. And honestly, you kind of deserved it. So when we're all rooting for you to get killed by a bunch of mutated zombies, that's how you know you f***ed up. Alright, in another part of the forest, Benji and his mom finally catch up with the old lady, but she keeps looking around and mumbling something about death. Which, okay, yeah, whatever. But Xana turns around to see her son lighting a flare and says that he saw something in the darkness. Ooh, scary. Taking the flare away, she actually notices that they're completely surrounded by human skeletons, which is when she realizes that they've accidentally stumbled straight into the creature's nest. They can even hear the monster bellowing at them from the shadows, giving them just enough time to run as it comes charging out of the woods. Oh, they're able to gain just a little bit of distance by slipping under a fallen tree, but the creature is still right behind them. Finally, Benji makes it to a road, getting there just as a truck is passing by, and it's those hunters from earlier in the movie. Remember those guys? They tell the family to get in before the deer catches up, but it's not going to be long before they realize that somehow the humans are even more dangerous. Yeah, it's one of those kind of movies. Check game, right? They're driving along, and Xena tells the hunters what happened, but she can't shake the feeling that something about them is a little sus. But in typical hunter fashion, in the back of the whip, one of the hunters chucks a dead bird out of the window, trying to lure Bambi closer to the base. Finally, they arrive at a fortified compound somewhere deep in the forest, but they haven't been there for more than a few seconds when they hear something moving around in the shadows. Michael draws his weapon and begins to sneak closer, which is when Xana's husband, Simon, steps out from behind the building. Spooky, got ya! Which is Benji's dad, and shocked, Benji immediately runs over to hug him, but it's clear that he got a little splaining to do before Xana makes up her mind. With the family distracted, the hunters take their flashlights and go to a shed where they have Bambi's fawn locked up inside of a tiny cage. Inside, Benji and his grandma listen to his parents arguing in the next room. Xana's furious at her husband for lying to them, but he snaps back when he says that they were never supposed to be here in the first place. She calls him out for never spending any time with their son, but none of them realize that Benji can hear every word that they say, which is like, you know, classic movie scene. Come on, Benji, I'm sorry, bro. Sorry you gotta go through this. With his little heart broken, he storms out of the house and starts crying on the porch, which, okay, fair, but that's when he hears the sounds of a baby deer in distress somewhere in the distance, and worried, he takes off towards the noise before his parents realize that he's gone. Inside the house, Xana says that they need to call the police, but Simon insists that he's gonna go to jail if she does that. Clearly furious, she storms in on the hunters and tells them to hand over the phone, but Michael pulls out the toolie and threatens to shoot her if she doesn't give it back. Realizing that she doesn't really have a choice, she gives him the phone back, and looking at the computer, she discovers that they've been capturing or killing different kinds of mutated animals from all over the forest. Michael explains that her husband's company dumped the chemicals that caused the creatures to mutate, so they've been tracking them down to get rid of the evidence. And now Bambi is the last trophy that they need for the platinum. Xana freaks out when she realizes that they're still in danger, but when she goes to check on her son, she's horrified to discover that he is already gone. Alright, well damn, people, you know it's bad when a genetically mutated deer takes better care of its kids than you do. Now Xana's in a dangerous position here because these hunters obviously can't be trusted, and if they won't let her call the police, then this probably won't be the last time that they're shoving a gun in her face, you know what I mean? So as long as they're letting her move around freely, she needs to find Benji and get the hell out of there like now. But the good news is that Bambi's going to be distracted while the hunters are pulling off their plan, so this gives Xana the perfect opportunity to slip away without running into trouble. The problem is, finding Benji is going to be the challenge, but that's where Grandma comes into play. Since she hasn't been turned into a meat shield yet, they might as well put her to good use. And she may not be making a lot of sense these days, but it's obvious that she has some kind of psychic connection to Bambi and her grandson, so that's a pretty big missed opportunity if they aren't using it. Instead of going off on her own, Xana should take the old lady with her, that way they can use the woman's connection to lead them to Benji, and she can also sound the alarm if Bambi gets too close, giving them a chance to hide before they're spotted. Worst case scenario, she can use Grandma here as a meat shield if things get too bad, or even use her as a bargaining chip if the hunters find them. Before leaving, they should also be looking around for a weapon, a flashlight, and a phone or radio. But if they want to get extra creative, there's one other thing that they might try. Back in Michael's office, she noticed that these hunters have also captured a mutated badger, and if that thing is still somewhere on the property, then Xana should be using it to her advantage. Before going to look for Benji, I'd go over to the shed, find the badger's cage, and set it free. Then she can throw one of the dead birds to lure it towards the house, giving Xana the perfect distraction while it rips the hunters to shreds. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, Benji watches from a distance as the hunters take the fawn to the middle of a clearing. That's when Tyler wanders off to go pee, but it's the last time that they'll ever see each other alive. Walking to the tree line, Tyler notices something passing by on the edge of his vision, but before he even knows what's about to happen, the monster charges in from the sides and takes his head off with a single bite. Worried, Xana tries asking the old woman what happened to Benji, but as usual, Mary's not making any sense. Frustrated, she rushes out of the house and starts calling for her son, but that's when she discovers her in-laws' dead bodies hidden underneath a tarp. Back in the forest, Eddie notices that his friend is still missing and starts following his trail to see what happened. It's not long before he finds the headless body lying on the ground, but as he takes out the radio to warn the others, he sees the massive creature coming walking out of the darkness, forcing him to run for his life. With the hunters distracted, Benji sneaks up to the cage and sets the baby free, but back at the base, the others notice what he's up to on their cameras. Furious, Michael grabs his pistol and goes to stop him, but as soon as he's gone, his partner Joe sees the monster chasing Eddie through the forest and decides to get the fuck up out of there while she still has the chance. Outside, Eddie runs back to the base and quickly jumps into the truck, but as he goes to start it up, he notices that the passenger door is still open. Nervous, he checks to see if the coast is clear before slowly reaching over to pull it shut, but as soon as he sits back up, Bambi tears open the door and starts biting down on his legs. He manages to roll to the other side of the truck, but his legs are too injured to run away, and walking up behind him, Bambi steps down on his back before leaning over and biting off his head. That makes 7 down with 4 more to go. Okay, these two are honestly the worst hunters that I've ever seen, and now it looks like their plot armor has finally run out. The truth is this plan was doomed from the start because these idiots were just letting the baby cry for help the entire time. Newsflash, morons! The trap doesn't work if Bambi knows about it before you're even finishing setting up. So if they had any common sense, they would have sedated the animal first and brought it to the bait site while it was asleep, giving them time to get to a safe distance before it started calling for help. That was mistake number 1, but mistake number 2 was when Tyler here split up to take a leak. Next time, stick with the damn group, that way you won't literally get caught with your pants down. At least Eddie had the brain power to run for a truck, but why the hell didn't he just start it and let the door close as he drove away? Maybe the battery was dead from the light being on, but if that's the case, just quietly crawl into the back seat and hide instead of wasting time. Now with the hunters out of the way, this gives Xana and her son a perfect chance to escape. Benji did the right thing by letting the baby free, but now it's time to let it run back into the forest to be with its family. With any luck, Bambi will be too busy looking for the baby to hunt down any more humans, and while he's distracted, Xana and Benji can regroup, get to a truck, and get the fuck out of there. Desperate to find Benji before it's too late, Xana runs into the forest and starts yelling for her son, while back at the house, Joe is just about to leave when she hears the monster breaking inside. Realizing that it hasn't seen her yet, she quietly backs into the kitchen and leaves the old woman for dead. Paralyzed, Mary just sits there as the beast opens its jaws, but that's when it hears Joe hiding in the next room. Instead of killing the old bird, the monster turns to the kitchen and starts forcing its way through the door. And realizing that she's about to die, Joe decides that her only choice is to fire into a gas tank, setting off a massive explosion that blows the entire house sky high. Back inside, the parents finally catch up with Benji just as he's being confronted by Michael, and he starts ordering the kid to give him back the baby deer. Simon tells him to do what the man says, but Benji refuses to listen, and just when the hunter is about to lose his temper, that's when they hear Bambi heading their way. Turning around, they see the monster coming towards them with its fur still burning from the explosion, and Michael opens fire, but he misses every shot. And charging straight for him, Bambi spears the man with his antlers and drags him away into the darkness. The man dropped his satellite phone during the attack, but Simon dives on top of it before his wife can get there, and the two of them start fighting as they both try to grab it. He manages to get the upper hand, but when they stand back up, they realize that Bambi is is going after their son. Instead of helping, Simon decides to run away while the creature is distracted, leaving his wife and son for dead. Unlike her deadbeat husband, Xana rushes over to help, and that's when she gets a new idea. Realizing that Bambi is just trying to save his baby, she tells her son to stay absolutely still as she takes the fawn and holds it out in front of them. The monster hovers down with its breath hitting her face, but instead of attacking, it holds back and allows her to stand up. Ignoring the humans, it leans down and starts to nuzzle up to the baby, but that's when somebody fires a shot and hits Bambi straight in the kneecap. It's the hunter, and he fires another 4 shots before he finally runs out of bullets, but as he looks down at the weapon, Mary shows up from completely out of nowhere and blasts him straight in the dome with a shotgun. Relieved, Benji rushes over to give his grandma a hug, while somewhere nearby his father is in a truck racing down the dirt road, which is when he hears something rustling around in the back seat, and pulling over, he starts fishing around behind him to see what it is. At first, it seems like there's nothing there, but when he turns around, he's kinda shocked to find one of the killer bunnies sitting on the dashboard. Terrified, he nervously reaches for the handle, but he doesn't make it far before Thumper lunges for his neck and starts tearing out his throat, making 10 down with 1 more to go. Xana and the others are kinda relieved that the nightmare is finally over, and they can only watch as Bambi slowly dies from his injuries. Heartbroken, the fawn lets out a mournful cry after being betrayed by humanity once again, but at least the people who were responsible finally paid the price. In the end, that makes 10 humans and 1 giant deer down with 4 survivors, and they all learned a pretty valuable lesson here: don't mess with nature, or else it might mess with you. Bambi the Reckoning. Man, hell yeah! They need to do this for every freaking cartoon character that I grew up with. I cannot wait for the next mutated animal movie to come out. For real. You guys gotta let me know if you would have done anything different in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.